There you go. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well.
So how are things going on?
Oh, it has been a really busy week, but it's been good. I work out of Boston, and we had snow I think on this day last week, we had about a foot of snow, and this week it was nice and warm. So all the snow is gone, and it has been a busy week. How about yourself? How have you been?
Not too bad, not too bad. It's getting we're at that season now where we are more experiencing gloomy weather. It's winter now. Raining all day. It's a typical Central European weather. So I'm not complaining, but that we are we are in that phase now already. So
Shorter days are
sort of
not,
days, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it's tough. They're not the most welcome thing, especially with everything we have going on in the world right now. So.
Yeah, yeah. And what's up with the way, um, COVID is being just a sec. Somebody's trying to join, I guess. Um, you're working in an organization which is kind of big, and I was thinking like, there must be a significant impact as far as how you are delivering the service to your client at the moment, right? So it's, I mean, for a smaller organization, perhaps it's manageable and you know all the person by heart, but in your case, perhaps it's not the same kind of challenge, right?
Yeah, an organization the size of EPAM's, we're roughly 40,000 people, and we serve clients across every industry. We have had times where we had a shift where I forget the exact percent, but I want to say it was in near the 90s of people delivering remotely and doing our work remotely. And probably shouldn't quote me on that exact percent because I'm not sure if that's exactly what it was, but it was a high degree. We actually It went exceptionally well. And we've been doing a lot of our work as an organization remotely this year. There's certainly work that we need to do in the office, and we have figured out ways to do that. But overall, we've done a good job of maintaining high productivity with our clients. It's coming with some added challenges for all of us. Like we're all working, longer days. Even you think you got rid of the commute, you should have shorter days. It doesn't work that way.
No.
But we're also like for a lot of people with families, you're juggling at home education, work. It just leads for longer days, and I think there's a fair amount of stress and exhaustion that comes from that we're being mindful of as an organization. Is how do we support people as that is their realities. In addition to people, obviously, unfortunately, some people being getting ill or having family members getting ill or close ones. So it's been challenging for sure, but we're handling it quite well. I'm quite impressed with how the global team is managed.
Mm, mm. So, if you have to look at your operations at the moment, you may have added more tools to your arsenal in a sense that it helps you, it adds the efficiencies and so forth, which otherwise you are perhaps not prepared to do that. And how do you see this change as far as your organization is concerned? Like many of the organizations, they are also adding more tools and hopefully they are transforming themselves. But in case of EPAM, like adding tools perhaps is a way to support the transformation. But overall, there might be other things that you need to think about, to really perform at the level that you are operating before COVID. So what can you talk about that?
Um, so we were actually already using a lot of tools that we continue to use now. And what
Yeah.
we've come to realize is those tools serve us just as well as when we're remote as when we are in the office together. So there's certainly been some new tools that we've added to around safety, keeping people safe, and the measures that we've made on that when people are coming into the office. But in terms of like the day-to-day and how we work, that part has been pretty smooth. I'll actually share, like, it's not a tool, but it's an outcome of this last year, which is a really cool thing has happened when we are no longer geographically clustered in the way that we were like when we go into the office every day. Your network all like your global network really becomes much more open and accessible to you, because people no longer, you know, are thinking of themselves as my team or the team around me, because the team around you, frankly, are the people in having conversations here.
Yeah.
And the seamlessness in which we can all jump into a meeting or jump into a call, into a discussion, where we used to do that in an office environment, it limited who could participate. Those barriers have been broken down. And so this really amazing outcome has been, as a global office, a global company, the tribes that are now really much more strongly connected across the globe is excellent. And it's in many ways because, you know, especially with new employees, like how do I know, what does it matter where that new employee is, right? Like our job is to bring them into the team regardless of where they are. And now we work more seamlessly across the globe, I think, as a result of this, which has been a really cool, unintended perhaps outcome of this, but it definitely has changed our behaviors.
You brought up the new employees perspective, and I'm kind of curious there, because if I'm a person like joining EPAM today, then I would like to maybe meet someone, you know, talk to a person, feel it, experience it, and then you know, understand the company culture and those kind of aspects, right? I'm missing that now, right? So if you think about my attachment towards EPAM is concerned, I would be less attached perhaps. How do you see that?
There's no denying what you just described, right? Like if you think about when we're making big decisions and making career choices of where we're going to go work, it's completely different now. And I was just talking with a new employee. She joined, I think it was in September, and we were just talking about this yesterday. Like I was asking her how it's been and stuff, and she's like, I'm so itching. She lives in Rhode Island. She's like, I'm so itching to come up to the Boston office and feel the place and see people and be with people in person, which I totally understand. And it's hard to replace that. I will share, she's been here 2 months, and she is more globally connected than I would suggest she would have been if she had started in the Boston office and spent her every day there for the last 2 months. So I'm not going to suggest that we're able to directly replace the connection and sense of culture that you get when you're able to be with people in person. We haven't figured that out. I don't think anybody has. We're emotional beings. Like we connect with people, we feel energy from people. There's just no denying that. At the same token, I always look at, well, what are the other things that are happening for individuals in the absence of that? And in her case, like listening to her talk about her network that she's building across the company, it was clear to me that she's actually got a much broader network than she would have if she'd come into a more traditional office environment from the onset. I don't think that makes it easier. It just makes it different. But it probably actually sets her up for longer term success, because she's going to have this broader network, if you will.
So in that regard, like, you know, we are essentially looking at transformation in the way we operate, not just on the business level, but also we are perhaps redefining the organization culture, right? If you think about, you know, perhaps meeting you is a different experience versus meeting now is a different experience, right? So I'm thinking, you know, I have a virtual meeting with you versus physical meeting, and maybe there are less emotion attached to you right now, right? So now is that a shift in a fundamental shift towards how the organization culture is designed, or do you think nothing changes and it remains as it is, right? So how do you see that shift?
I personally think the organization is being redesigned in real time as a result of the current reality. And I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record. Like what's happening is it's in our nature. Like it's called proximity effect. So the people that you're close to, like physically within close proximity to, that's where you're going to have your densest, your strongest relationships. It's a psychological like phenomenon. It's what happens where we have our physical connections with people. That proximity with people is where our strongest connections come from. We're living in a world where those physical connections don't exist anymore. So what's happening for all of us is the people we're spending time with, because we're still very social animals, and now we're spending time with people here.
Yeah.
Those people, for our team, we're doing it more globally than we've ever done it before. And so your proximity effect is actually taking place more in a digital domain now than where it used to take place in a physical domain. Mm-hmm. So I personally, I'm working on a project right now that spans North America and Europe, and roughly half the team is in Europe. And mm-hmm. I've developed really strong connections with them, as strong as my North American colleagues, because my proximity is actually equal, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right. So
yeah.
I don't have any closer relationship with anybody in North America than I do in Europe with this team, because we all meet here. So it's kind of this equalizer, interesting thing that's happening to us. And as an organization, just to understand, EPAM, obviously, we've got our structure and as organizational structure, but the way we really operate is our network. And our network is a personal network, but it's also an informal network, and it's also intelligent platforms that help bring different people together. The network's how we operate in the service of our clients. And that network, maybe this is the best way to talk about it, that network used to have or it still has a significant proximity effect influencing it, but the proximity effect has been redefined. Because proximity used to be about physical proximity. Now it's not. It's really about digital proximity. So it's been quite intriguing from that standpoint.
Because I'm thinking more in terms of employees, right? So for employees, meeting people and meeting the managers and so forth, perhaps used to be the driver, right? So some of the employees perhaps, and it's a new reality check that they're not able to access those physical presence. And how do you see the productivity now compared to where people were, before COVID and versus now, including your team, right? Perhaps you're dealing with the same team before and after. So how do you see that productivity based on whether or not they are able to access their managers or their peers in the office space? Do you think that has changed?
I think it's going through a transition. And I can probably speak more directly for my team than overall productivity measures for global EPAM, because it's just I don't have as much deep domain visibility into it. Mm-hmm. But if I look at the team that I directly work with, I think we all would say learning how to do what we do in remote environments has a productivity hit. What that means for us is it's those long days I was talking about. Mm. It's why I think we've had to put in longer days, unfortunately, in some instances, longer weekends into the work, because we still have an obligation to be able to do this work for our clients and meet our timelines. So we've gone through a bit of that. As we've gone through it, we've also are experimenting with different tools and different ways of doing the work. And we're starting to find some that give us some productivity lift. And we're starting to get to things that we look at and go, that's a wash overall, even though it's different to do it this way. I no longer have to travel halfway across the country and spend time going to one-on-one interviews. I can just stack them up one after another. Mm-hmm. And it changed, in the case of contextual research, it changes the overall effort. More effort goes into planning for that discussion, because it's harder to have a deep exploratory discussion over a camera. Mm-hmm. But the other parts of traveling, of scheduling, it's easier from that standpoint. So I'm not sure if I'm really answering your question, but I would just say we're in a transition. There were at the beginning, it was, I think, a clear hit on trying to learn how to do this in new ways. But as we've gotten better at that, there's some normalization that's happening. And I think, the next normal or the new normal that's coming, we're going to take a lot of this stuff with us. We're definitely not reverting back to just going back to the way that we did it before.
Yeah, I mean, I speak to a lot of leaders and entrepreneurs on this space, and they echo the things that you said. Because in some cases, companies were already doing, let's say, 80 to 90% of the work remotely, and those companies are perhaps better equipped to really not been affected by the change, right? So those companies exist. And when I speak to those leaders, they say, "Oh yeah, nothing changed. For us, it was not a big deal. And I can imagine for a company like EPAM, perhaps it's not has not translated, um, to what others have experienced. So maybe it's slightly different for you guys. So yeah.
I will add, so I head up part of our integrated consulting offering, and for our consultants, they were doing remote work. Every one of them was already doing remote work prior. So the remote work part's not really the challenge. It's learning new ways to, when we would bring people together, whether it's a really important client work session, and we need to bring leadership all together on our client side with us and say, this is where we're going with our digital transformation, and get people aligned on that, or have a deep kind of knock it out discussion about it. We're really good at that in a contextual, immersive environment. You can invite people into that workshop and go, by the way, literally the senior executives, put your phone here on your way in, leave your laptop in your bag, and be present. You don't get to say that anymore.
Yeah.
You're now in these environments, and we all have things popping up, distracting us. And so we've had to change how we do those things for sure. And that's probably been one of the bigger shifts in how we do our research for sure. How we collaborate internally when we bring teams together that are accustomed to coming together in a project room. That's a digital project room now. But over the last 6 months, we've become really quite adept at it. And like I said, a lot of those things we're going to carry forward with us, because now we're recognizing some of the better aspects of doing it in a digital domain versus the physical domain. There's other aspects that I think we will go back to or mix it up differently. But yeah, it's been really interesting from that standpoint for my team.
And talking about digital transformation, there must be a definition that you have perhaps defined for yourself, or maybe gathered experience towards that prior to COVID, right? So I'm just trying to build this up, before the COVID and after the COVID. So, or during the COVID, I would say. There's no really after now. Yeah. So not yet. So I'm just thinking, what has changed in the definitions, right? So there must be something that you are thinking about. Digital transformation is blah blah blah. Now you're thinking, in the context of COVID, perhaps we have to redefine the definition of digital transformation. How do you see that, or should we even think about that, right? So yeah.
I think it's a really interesting question. Yeah. I will share with you my immediate response is our definition really hasn't changed, but the urgency by which organizations need to go after it has only been amplified, and it was already an incredibly urgent mandate for organizations to drive digital transformation through their organizations. The urgency of it now, because for many, depending on what sectors you're in, for many it's a difference between being a market leader to a market laggard in a very short amount of time, to potentially, not being in business in worst case scenarios in industries like retail and restaurants. You're seeing it already, that the organizations that had already been investing and making significant progress in their digital transformation work are reaping major benefits up from it right now. And others that are behind are scrambling to catch up. I've been really impressed what Walmart has been marching on this journey, this digital transformation journey for quite a while now. And what COVID has done is it's accelerated the value that they're getting from that, the value they're delivering to their customers from it. And their investments are paying off in major ways. So they've really hit it in stride. And in many parts, it's because of the work that, in all parts, actually, it's because of the work that they had done prior to this pandemic. So I don't actually think our definition has changed. To answer your question, I think the urgency around a digital transformation has changed.
Mm-hmm. And when you are talking to perhaps you're talking to a lot of organizations during this phase, and also before the let's say the pandemic hit us, when you are talking to the leadership, as far as the need for the transformation before, and of course there are obvious reasons now to transform and so forth, but then what do you think has changed in terms of attitude? The same person perhaps you're talking now versus before the COVID, or you're talking to new customers and so forth. So what do you think in terms of the attitude? You mentioned the word urgency, but still there might be other elements beneath that, right? So what can you talk about those things?
In terms of help me understand that question a little bit more in terms of
okay.
the client. Yeah, say a little more.
So what happens is, like, if you look at the banking industry, right? So if you think about a banking industry, which is very traditional and which never thought like they had to change over a million years, now they need to, basically, shut down all their banking operations as far as the smaller offices are concerned. Now, perhaps the leadership thought like they never had to change there, right? And we are talking about the time now. Most of the things that we do are from home. And in your role, perhaps you have to also deal with some of the leadership, maybe banking industry, maybe for insurance industry and so forth. And do you need to put an extra effort in terms of convincing that they need to take this route? Otherwise they are out of the business, or before the COVID. And now that, maybe the time has favored you to say, hey guys, this is what, we've been advocating, and this has changed now. So in that perspective, like, how do you see that difference?
Maybe we're really lucky. We get to work with clients that have a really good sense of the importance. So yeah. I think for the most part, our clients have before the pandemic and during the pandemic, their sense of the importance of it really hasn't changed. We talk a lot about how leadership, we're recognizing that in many ways the pandemic has taken what we used to think about maybe being a 5-year horizon and realizing, like, we have to bring this down to a 2-year horizon or a 3-year horizon, or what, like, we need to make faster progress, this urgency effect, because of how disruptive the pandemic has been to their industry. And it varies quite a bit by different industries, but for the most part, like, those are the conversations we're having of my time horizon just came in, what do we do? And that's a difficult conversation, because I'm of the opinion that there's already, digital transformation work for the most part is very challenging. I forget the statistics exactly, but majority of companies aren't happy with how the return on their investment so far, if you just, if you look at the data. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. Maybe it's worth just sharing, when kind of philosophically, how we think about digital transformation. So when we talk about those two things internally, like, one of the things we stress internally with our clients is the emphasis really needs to be on the transformation part. Because if you put the emphasis on digital, there's a high tendency to digitize today's business, to create digital ways of doing what you do today, but more efficiently. And you get some cost benefits from that. But that's not really transformative. So when we talk about digital transformation, what we talk about is it's an opportunity to leverage technology to transform an organization so it operates in new ways. And those new ways can be, it creates new value in the market, it dramatically improves, makes it easier for customers to interact with it. Can be about new distribution channels, new business models. But if you really want to take advantage and leverage digital transformation, you should be thinking long and hard on how you're going to operate differently as you make these investments. And that statement is in direct conflict with the pressures and urgencies that leaders feel right now to drive digital transformation. And so sometimes what that lends itself to is you just want to get on with it. So you start going down the path of saying, what do we need to digitize? Where can we bring digital into our organization? And that can oftentimes lead to incremental improvements being provided by digital transformation, but you're not actually getting the whole value of meeting customers where they expect to be if you're still operating fundamentally in the same way you used to. So that part of the conversation with our clients is it's a really important conversation to have, because I think we all feel the pressure to move fast, but speed applied in the wrong direction can be more dangerous than not moving at all.
Yeah.
And we never recommend to our clients to not move. Like, to stay competitive in your marketplace, you always have to be evolving, but you do need to know where you're evolving to. And having that taking that effort to paint that clear picture of this is where we're going, and then executing as quickly as you possibly can towards it and testing it as you go along is so important. Committing the resources and time to paint that picture is probably one of the most valuable things leaders can do as they're driving digital transformation at the onset. And not doing that at the onset and saying, we'll figure it out as we build it, is dangerous. I don't see that working well.
And you mentioned about the business model, like sometimes people even have to be prepared to change their business model, right? So how do you convince a leader to say, hey, you know what, your business model sucks, now you need to change that, right? So in reality, like, maybe that's not the language you would use, but in reality you are saying that, right? So how do you convince someone, like, to, hey, all this year it's working, but it's not going to work anymore, right? So how do you convince someone?
So most of our clients, their current business model is not broken. Like, it doesn't suck right now. Because if it did, they'd be struggling more. Like, our clients are healthy, doing quite well in their industries. So the conversation you need to have is, I don't attack today's business model as much as I talk about what are the additional revenue streams you could open up if we started to consider other business models, and how might that help us stand up new revenue streams, additive revenue streams. Now, as you have those conversations, it's natural for them to lead into some of those might cannibalize today's business.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a challenging conversation. I've been lucky in my career. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've been fortunate enough to work with leaders who understand if your business can be cannibalized, it's best that you do it, and not somebody else. But it takes a particular type of leader. We talk a lot about mavericks required. It's why it's so hard, frankly. Not everyone can do it, but those are the conversations that we have, and we really we don't attack today's model as much as we talk about additive business models, additive distribution channels. And yes, over time, those new distribution channels will likely become your primary distribution channels. And yes, over time, that additive business model, that different way of serving the market, that new offering might become your biggest economic engine. But we don't have to attack today's engine. Some people try to go after that. It's kind of foolish. You don't want to attack what's causing you to survive today. You want to leverage that and add to it, use it.
How much of this transformation is purely based on leadership willingness to actually realize that that there is something wrong in the way they are running the business, right? Even though they are on the sweet spot, pile of cash, but then it's a cash, it can disappear very fast, right? So um what do you think about the leadership behavior there, like who needs to realize, and maybe how do you educate them, right, about the realizations?
That's a really good question in terms of like what you're getting at, and the challenges of like why does transformation work go sideways sometimes, not provide the return on investments that organizations are expecting. And when we talk with our clients about it, and if we're having a conversation about digital transformation, we need to be having it with the executive leadership of the company. And we go further to say, you all need to join us on this journey. You need to be part of the journey and part of establishing how the company is going to transform, painting that future picture I was talking about. You need to do that with us. You need to be there. And it's a challenging conversation because the reality is these are executives of billion-dollar businesses who are incredibly busy. And we're talking about giving us a significant portion of their time to work on this with them. But we think it's a prerequisite to ensuring you have more success with your digital transformation. You need that alignment at the top of the organization. You need that understanding and an ability to articulate where the organization is going. The companies that can articulate and understand where the company is going and how to make decisions around that, prioritize, make those trade-off decisions, are the ones that are going the fastest. So taking the time to make sure everyone is aligned and understanding where we're going is critically important. So I guess the way we have the conversation with them is we make it a prerequisite of this journey that they're joining in it with us. We're there to help facilitate. We're there to bring outside thinking, to challenge preconceived notions. But at the end of the day, the destination that we define together needs to be one that they own and they've created. And that's not for every organization. But I don't even, I have to be careful how I say this. For me, it's strategically, it's an amazing investment your organization is going to make. Over the next 5 years, the hundreds of millions of dollars that you're going to spend on digital transformation and how it can ensure your success, continued market expansion is why you're doing it. Help shape where it needs to go. It is that important. So that's a little bit of how we talk about it.
Yeah, but I'm also thinking like, it's as you described, it is a journey, right? A journey has a beginning and perhaps has an end. But what we also know is it's a transformative process, right? So the thing is, like you set up a journey and it perhaps never ends. Like how do you sell that story that it doesn't have an end? It's an evolutionary process. We have to constantly evolve, constantly challenge ourselves, and those kind of stories that you want to build it up. And if I'm an investor saying, hey, you want my 100 million, there must be some stopovers, along this journey. What are the stopovers, and how do you define those stopovers and convince that, I need to continuously invest my money into this, right? So how do you do that?
Great question. So there's a couple layers to it, and I apologize if it gets a little bit too into the weeds, but so there's a couple things that we do. Is one is we think you have to know where you're going. So we call it a North Star, a lighthouse, moonshot, whatever you want to call it, but you have to know where you're going to direct your efforts. Once you've defined that, we do a mix of forecasting from where you are and your current state and near investments, like how are they helping us move that way, and backcasting to develop your roadmap. Then we go through a really intense road mapping effort. And that intense road mapping effort is a combination of defining what we need to do to start moving towards our future destination, to all those initiatives, how we're going to do those things, what are the added capabilities that we need to enable those different initiatives within the organization, and then why. And the why is the most important one, which is a business case. If we're going to invest this much, we expect to get what from it. And each each investment, each year has those proof points that you're talking about of, are we progressing in the right direction? Do we have evidence that gives us confidence that we should continue to make those investments?
Mm-hmm.
So the what, the how, and the why being the business casing, is really, really important part of the work that we do. On the destination and it being a journey, you do want to set a destination that's bold and ambitious, and you move towards it. As you get close to it, you need, if you want to stay ahead in this market, because it's a fiercely competitive market everywhere, you need to reset your destination. Mm-hmm. But that's normally like a every 3 to 5 year kind of thing. One of my favorite ones I like to reference, just as I think they're doing an amazing job of it, is Tesla. And so if you think about Tesla, when they first started off, the company was actually called Tesla Motors, if you remember back then. Yeah. And they've never publicized this, but if you look at what they've been doing, I think their destination for Tesla Motors was to build the people's car as an electric vehicle. So in a cost-effective electric vehicle that the average family could buy. And Model 3 has gotten them pretty close to that. And if you backcast from every step that they've taken to get to Model 3, because they couldn't invest in all the production and everything required to make Model 3 in year 1. Mm-hmm. You backcast from Model 3 to X to S to Roadster, and how each of those helped them. There were initiatives that built capabilities that allowed them to get to their North Star. Like, that works really well. It's also brilliant as Elon Musk, as they approached their North Star, he set the new one, mm-hmm. rebranded the company. And I think their current destination, their current ambition is to redesign energy, how it's produced, how it's stored, and how it's distributed. And that's a big, grand destination that they have as a company. But if you go back and look at what their first steps are, Model 3, Gigafactory, Solar City, like, they're doing all the pieces of it already, mm-hmm. but they're heading towards that different destination, and they've got a broader thing to work towards. Mm-hmm. That is an incredibly aggressive version of it. Not every organization needs to be that aggressive, but the approach is very similar.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, that's a very good example, right? But then not every organizations are built in that direction, or they fundamentally, they are not. Maybe they don't have the kind of innovation, within the DNA, right? Something that they see, like, okay, this organization are doing pretty well. There must be a very good reason they're doing very well, then they come to you and so forth. So maybe there is an evolutionary process within there. Like you mentioned about certain milestones, certain things that you want to achieve on a map. When things go according to plan, the organization really love you, right? So, they're, you know where I'm heading now. So, so when do you feel like, oops, we screwed up, right? So in those aspects, can you maybe elaborate there, without being really political? Can you elaborate some of the instances where you felt like, shit, we could have done it differently, because it's a learning, right? So nobody is perfect in a sense that, we see the excellence, right? We know that this is where we want to go. But, the steps that we have taken, perhaps it's not that ideal for some cases, right? So maybe if you can, then maybe explain some of the examples that you may have.
Yeah, that's such a tough question. You're really just asking me to, put it all out there. I'm gonna answer that a bit of a high level, but I will do my best to answer it sincerely.
Yeah.
So anybody who's been doing this long, none of us do perfect work.
Yeah.
It's not a real thing. I'd say most programs have moments of being in the red, if you will, of not going to plan. And what I have found is how you respond in those moments is what matters. Mm-hmm. And there's a couple of different ways you can respond. And I think it matters both on the partner side, what EPAM, how we approach those moments, and the client side. You can come together and point blame, and that's not the most productive.
Mhm.
What you end up happening in those, if you spend much time in the blame game, what ends up happening is you're unraveling a relationship and you're heading towards not working together in the future. And what we do as an organization, and I'm really proud of this, is we fully embrace if something's in the red, if it's not being delivered on time, if it's going over budget, if not accomplishing what it's supposed to in the market. What we need to do is lean in deeper in that moment, go after it harder, bring more resources to it, bring more attention to it, to understand how do we correct it? What do we do differently? And we try to have that both from an EPAM point of view, like this is what we need to do as a team, as an organization. But we also try to embrace and invite our clients to come with us on that, and saying like, we're gonna do everything we can to get this out of the red, but we're a partner with this with you. We really could use your help in figuring out how to get this out of the red. Why is it wrong? You know, what that means from a partnership, from a financial like incentives and all that, I won't get into too much, but like I will say, if you deliver perfectly every time, you're going to be a great partner. I wish we delivered perfectly every time. We don't. If every time you don't deliver perfectly, you lean in harder, you're going to be a great partner. And that's really what we strive for. Is, of course, we want to deliver perfectly as much as we possibly can, but it's more about, as an organization, how do we respond and lean in on it? And it's why we look at things and track things so carefully to understand what things are in the red. Because the sooner you can get them out of the red, the better partnership is. So that's pretty high level, which I understand. But I hope it gives you a little bit of context for how mindset that we bring to it.
No, indeed. Like, you know, I'm just trying to see how do you perhaps, you know, maybe identify the early signs. You know, it's like, okay, this is not working. This is not supposed to happen. You know, how do you know that? You know, those elements, perhaps, you know, from your experience, you already know, like, okay, you've worked in multiple different projects. Now you know you are in a position where you can definitely say, this is a red flag to me. Like, how do you identify that?
Well, I think there are so many ways. It so depends on the engagement and the variety of engagements we have. It'll be really hard for me to give you a very specific answer to that. But you know, at the end of the day, like the more complicated the work, the more important it is you have somebody who's what we refer to as an orchestrator in the work. And we use a team of teams approach. And if you've got multiple teams working on an overall complex challenge, that orchestrator needs to be responsible for spotting across all the teams where things are going south or when they're going south. So having somebody in that role maybe is a pattern recognition by us, saying, without that member, and it's not a single person, like we have our PMO team, our delivery management team, but at the end of the day, they're all looking across teams to understand where the hot pockets are. That's recognition of the more complex the work gets, the more orchestration it requires. And orchestration making sure we're doing the right things, but identification of where things are going sideways. So we make it people's responsibility to track that. We also, at the end of the day, much of this has to do with your sorry for lack of a better word, but your intimacy with the client. Because if you have a really tight, intimate relationship with the client, they can see where things are going off track, sometimes through their lens, sooner than we can always. And that you need to have a close relationship with them, because you don't want them to hesitate a moment before they tell you. The sooner you know, the sooner you can resolve it. So kind of generic but high level, it's about client relationships and how we manage those clients, and then orchestration of complex programs, the team of teams approach, having individuals, teams responsible for identifying where things are going sideways, because it starts in smaller pockets before it infects the whole thing, if you will. You can find those smaller pockets first, and identifying where there's some gaps or disconnects, we're going to be better off for it.
And you know, let's maybe change a little bit as far as the subject is concerned. I want to talk about innovation, because you're a part of the innovation, I assume. And what do you think drives innovation? Or how do you transform an organization which are not known to be an innovative organization? And what's your approach there?
So I really love the question. I'm trying to be mindful of like how much I go into depth because I'm running up into a calendar challenge.
Yeah.
But our approach to that innovation conversation, it doesn't differ that much between an organization that considers themselves a leader in innovation and an organization that might say, we haven't been doing it well. I think in either case, like the work required to get those two different organizations to start doing it consistently or doing it more, there's more work with a company that hasn't been doing it well than one that is more comfortable with it. So that makes for a different conversation in terms of the steps required to get them consistently driving new innovations to market. But with regards to like how do you drive innovation overall? For me, the number one most important thing is understanding the purpose of the innovation. And so for my team, the work that we do, what we help clients do, our purpose is to help them find better ways to serve their customers. Mm-hmm. Now, the purpose of every company, the only reason a company exists is to serve its customers. Mm-hmm. So every company started with an innovation. They found some new way to serve a customer group that allowed them to get market share. Some of those companies continue to evolve and continue to put new innovations out, find better ways to serve those customers, extend that to different customers, whatever it may be. Some organizations had the really big idea and has been driving it for a while and hasn't actually been all that innovative for a while. Mm-hmm. If they're coming to us to have a conversation about innovation, it has to go right back to the purpose of why does the company exist, who are your customers, and then let's go figure out better ways to serve those customers. Too often innovation starts with, let's look at our ideas and try to prioritize all the ideas that we have. Maybe we need more ideas. That's not innovation work. Mm-hmm. We call that innovation theater. It feels and looks a lot like innovation, but it's not innovation. Mm-hmm. Because the hard reality is it's really hard to know what good ideas are. It's really hard to spot them. And most of the ideas, and we're in the idea business, so I get to say this, but most ideas are crap. Yeah. Most ideas aren't good ideas. So I know organizations are like really proud. We've got a database of thousands of ideas. Can you help us prioritize them? Yeah. And my first question is, what problem are we trying to solve? Yeah. Because I have no idea. I'm not going to be able to look in your database and figure out what good ideas are there.
Yeah.
That sounds like a brutally painful exercise unless I know what problem I'm trying to solve. Yeah. Some other clients come in and say, like, we want to look at our database and add more ideas. My response to that is always like, let's make sure we understand the purpose. What's the value we provide in the marketplace? And who are the new customers we want to serve? Existing customers, new customers, like, let's get it clear on that. And based on that, let's go find problems worth solving for them to help guide how we think about what a good idea is. Mm-hmm. Then you might have something in your database that's perfect, and we'll be able to filter it out and see it. But if we don't understand the idea, if we don't understand the problem that we're trying to solve, it's not the right way to go about innovation. Trying to plant 1,000 seeds and seeing which flower grows is a very expensive way to go about innovation, because all those seeds actually require a lot of water. Yeah. So I hope that's helpful. I really enjoyed the conversation. You've asked some great questions.
No, indeed. Like, it's something that I like to sort of put up with the leaders, because being in this space, it's very challenging already, like being able to serve a traditional industry, and to sort of, see the direct interaction with people, the leadership and so forth. And to be able to then talk to others who are also, dealing with the traditional industry and to know their perspective is very interesting for me, in this particular space. It's, I don't know how important it is for a leadership to be, intact with their teams. with their vision. Obviously, most of the people will say, yeah, they need to be intact and so forth. But how much of that is translated to the people, like the employees who are actually going to deliver that? And how do you play the crucial role into translation of that vision, right? So perhaps there is a bridge between the information dropping down to the employee, and there is a leader sitting on top of the vision and saying blah blah blah, and perhaps your job is to bring down that bridge and make it closer, right? So that's why I asked you a lot of questions around there, right?